Cornhusker Connection on SVSM. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by Brooke Byrne and Tyler Sprinkle. Fellas, this might be the most happy show that we've ever done.
Very true.
Yeah, in some ways, yes.
In some ways.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like we got a good segment for our downer of the podcast, but I'll just get started with this. And where I want to start the show off is how, and I don't know Tyler might prove me wrong here, but I'm so happy. And I was thinking about how a couple years ago we started this podcast, Tyler, after the Northwestern game, because we're so fucking tired of being miserable Nebraska fans. There's got to be something better out there. So we're like, we got to find something better. Then, of course, Matt Rule gets hired, and then by the end of the season, we're all the way back in. But to go from being so miserable all the time that I'm like, I quit being a Husker fan to where I'm at today as a Husker fan and the direction of the program that's finally starting to show like tangible results. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, it is night and day from back then. I can't even remember some of the teams that we were talking about joining. I'm glad that we stuck it out because it was always going to be Nebraska, and I'm glad that they figured their shit out.
And so, obviously, the highlight of the week, Colorado losing to Nebraska 28-10. Brooke and I were kind of talking about it before we hopped on the air, but what were you guys' first knee-jerk reaction to the game?
Definitely that we have a top 5 defense in the country. And the fact that we still didn't blitz on like very many plays against Colorado is crazy because Shedeur Sanders was running for his life the whole night.
Yeah, it was very easy to see that they were outmatched right away. It was a great experience watching the game, watching us dominate. But during the game, Brooke and I were talking, and Brooke actually made a good point that I'll get to later. Should have been 50 to nothing. Like it should have absolutely been a blowout. But Brooke was saying, no, we can't let off because they're going to use this as like fuel to keep going. And that's exactly what they're fucking doing. He was exactly right.
Well,
and now it's just annoying looking at all this shit on Twitter.
Yeah, just at face value, like you take stock of like what actually happened, and our offense only scored 21 points on maybe one of the worst Power 5 defenses out there. And I just, we're up 28-0 at half. Like, even if we get one touchdown in the second half, which is being very modest, I think I feel a little bit better. But it almost felt like we were just trying to get out of there to not lose that game. And I really just hated how the offense looked in the second half. And Matt Rule's press conference this morning, he even said we should have scored 42 to 50 points. And it's just like, yes, our defense is like great, and there was never a shot Colorado was going to win that game. We still have, I feel like, a long way to go.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. I feel the sentiment. What do you think was the biggest factor for that? Because I've been seeing a lot of Satterfield slander, but it didn't seem like the game plan was that much different. I mean, they had a couple of long drives. One got negated by penalty. Both of them kind of got thrown off by penalties. And when field goal range is the 12-yard line, you kind of limited on what you can do offensively there. But I guess, yeah. What did you think it was?
So, I mean, Tyler kind of talked me off the ledge a little bit where that was a horribly officialed game where we probably got one or two touchdowns taken off the board by the refs, but like neither here nor there. Like we have to be better than that. But we were 3 for 12 on third downs against Colorado, which is very worrisome. And it just felt like every series that we were at like 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 12 or like 3rd and forever. And I'm like, all right, you have to have something better on first and second down to keep your true freshman quarterback out of those situations. And it's just, I don't know if it's a lot of what Rule said was it was guys missing blocks, whether that be O line or wide receivers. But I mean, as OC, your job is to score points, and it really just felt like Satterfield, the way he called plays, put us in a bad spot all night. Or I shouldn't say all night, in the second half.
Yeah, in the second half, it was basically first down, run right up the middle. Second down, probably run up the middle or run to either side. And then third and 12, it's let's try to run like a 2 yard dig route and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm right there because my eyes told me that the scheme was about the same as it was in the first half, minus the deep shots that Dylan was taking in the first half. Didn't see any of those until late in the game on the second half. But and on the officials, I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, even if you're in the camp of like they're not that awful and those calls were fine calls, they were so nitpicky and they they ruined the drives. They ruined the rhythm, if nothing else, if absolutely nothing else. Like there were a couple of ones where I'm like, okay, I guess that was holding, real nitpicky, but if nothing else, it just ruins the rhythm. And rhythm was kind of the one thing that I feel like they were missing the whole second half, that and energy. And I don't know how much of that you can put on to Satterfield, but nonetheless, not an ideal second half for sure. But I will say they felt in control the entire game. And same thing with UTEP because I also see folks, and it's different, chirping about how Nebraska didn't score that many points against UTEP. Again, very different. But I've seen a couple of tweets that bring up the fact that they've only scored 10 points in the second half. I'm like, that's not. They're in control, and I'll take that.
Very true. The thing that I would like to see more out of Satterfield's offense, I suppose, is using the intermediate routes. It feels like everything's like a touch pass or like a swing pass or a screen or it's just a straight go ball. And as a secondary, Colorado really didn't have to worry about any of that. It's like, hey, either it's going to get out of his hands quick or he's going deep. But like you said, you can't be mad at a decisive win over your rival.
Yeah, it does feel very uninspired with like the route combinations and the play ideas. I mean, Ja'Cory Barney has been the talk of the town since that game. He's very, very fun to watch. Really even mentioned him by name today. Got to get him the ball as many times as you possibly can because he's really fun and really good, seemingly. So, yeah, it's just the wide receiver screens. Just, I don't know. It's very basic, almost like pretty solid off high school offense is what I would kind of equate that to. Like Texas Division A football high school offense.
I think you're very spot on with that.
Yeah, that's some good analysis, and I think you're on the right page. I do wish it would have looked better, especially in the second half. Especially, and I mean, hindsight's 2020. But I also think that the disastrous outcome is that we keep trying to be aggressive. We keep trying to push downfield, but then it ends up in turnovers, and they start to get confidence back. And I don't think you should be playing scared, but I think that's probably what it was. And I'll take that. I mean, 0 interceptions through 2 games. Jeff Sims probably had 17 up to this point last year.
Hey, quit it.
And it's not, it's not being hyper aggressive. More so, it's just like the name of the game for the offense is to score points. And I mean, statistically, North Dakota State had a better offense against Colorado than we did. Like that's just what it is right now. But I mean, like we said, decisive dub. It's only week 2. Like it feels like we can only go up from here.
Yeah, overall, I feel great about their performance. Like I said, I wish the offense would have been better, but the defense, I'm so juiced by because I thought like even if you had like sat me down and interrogated like what's going to happen, I'd be like, well, Colorado's going to get theirs. No, they didn't get shit. They were off. Shooter Sanders was in hell all night. Travis Hunter got a couple of big catches in garbage time, but otherwise he was in a phone booth. I mean, that defense was unbelievable against like NFL level guys.
That's the encouraging thing where, I mean, Tommy Hill, that everybody's talking about now, is going to be like a late first rounder. Nash and Ty got to be draft picks. And our linebackers, the guys that no one's talking about, Bayer and Bullock were awesome, running around like heat-seeking missiles.
Yeah, it sucks to lose Bayer first half next game, but thankfully it's just you and I. Yeah, Bullock played out of his mind. I mean, I think his coverage led to that pick six where he picked up Travis Hunter on that stick
Absolutely
route.
right. He came in
Um,
and jumped the slants, and Tommy Hill got to hang back and hawk the
yeah.
ball there. That's absolutely right.
So Bullock himself had Shadur in a pretzel there, which is great to see.
Oh,
Um,
God, that was awesome.
yeah,
And also, and just kind of circling back to where we were at the beginning of the year, all that we were asking for was like an average offense. I feel like that was at least average
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
with some flashes.
the sky is not falling. Like, Dylan didn't turn the ball over. We didn't fumble. It's just, it would have, it would have really just, you know, we could have really put our stamp on it
Yeah.
if it was like 49-10 or 42-10, and
Yeah,
but
I love the
it
sound
Also,
of
is what
that.
it is.
you got to think about too. Dylan missed some deep throws.
Yeah,
Um,
the timing was
no, he
off.
wasn't very far off, but he was off a little bit. So even if one or two of those connects, I think we're not talking about this right now. So a few things definitely go a different way. And I just can't get this specific penalty I'm thinking about with officiating that game is I think Ja'Cory Barney was on an end around,
Yeah,
and
Ramir
Ramir
Johnson,
Johnson was holding or something.
Just knocked his
and
ass to the
even
ground. That's all it was.
everybody on the NBC network was like, "That's just a pancake. That's just a really fucking good block," is all that is.
But then also thinking about how they were calling the game and how they were wrong about almost everything, kind of made me second guess myself a little bit. I was like, oh, maybe it was a holding because they're saying it wasn't. So
Well, and
all
then
time bad booth, by the way.
the one where I think Shador tried to get out of the pocket, and like in real time, you saw Nash's jersey get grabbed and just nothing, and we're like, "What the hell?" And I mean, they threw 22 flags, and then something that obvious doesn't get called was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awful. And my gosh, it ruined the flow of the game because even by the end of it, I'm like, just get this fucking game over with.
And that's what kind of left like a sour taste in my mouth is everybody was like, let's just get it over with. We're like, let's just take our dub and move on. Whereas it wasn't. The first half was electric, but like by the end, everybody was just like, all right, this is a shit show. Let's go home, take our dub, and
Yeah,
it just
really felt like that. And so overall, I don't have a whole lot of concerns about the offense. I think they'll figure it out. A lot of rhythm and things, a lot of timing things. The one thing that I am very concerned about, which I've been concerned about for since day one, is why don't we have a kicker? We don't even have a kicker to kick off anymore. They had a Bushimi kick that last one that ended up going through the end zone. So we
dude,
don't have a place kicker, don't have a kickoff kicker without him getting pulled. I mean, what's the problem? What's going on?
I think Alvano's has just got to be mental stuff because he has all the physical tools. Like we've seen it. If you doubt whether or not Tristan Alvano can kick, just Google his high school highlights. But um, yeah, I think it's a case of the yips with him. I don't know a whole lot about the whole kid, but feels like he should be kicker one going forward.
Well, that's what I would
Yeah.
think. But I mean, they've had kicking competitions leading up to this, and I'm assuming Alvano won those kicking competitions in practice, which I guess to your point might be the problem. Is I mean, when there's nobody in the stands, that
Yeah,
might be a different ball
practice.
game.
They're just, if you're around sports long enough, there are some guys that are just practice warriors, and then they get in a game and it's just not the same. But, I don't know. it's easy for us to guess being on the outside, but those coaches see it every day, and Hull must not be as good as Alvano if he hasn't won that job yet.
And I mean, I see a freshman kicker boot it from 53 yards in Iowa City to win the game in front of 60,000 terrorists screaming and obscenities at him, I'm sure, and just horrible things, and not even phase. Would have been good from 64. And yet we can't kick a 32-yarder.
Well, I wonder if it's more so Rule is trying to instill the confidence back in Alvano because as Brooke, you said, he can kick the damn ball. He can.
Oh,
It's just he can't do it in the game. So I wonder if Rule is just trying to save him one last time before we eventually switch to the other kid. But
and it's not even like he's just missing. It's the fact that the one he kicked was a wobbler, and it was not even close, and that was what, less than 40.
32 yards.
yeah.
Oh my! I mean, that just. I mean, if he has any aspirations of going to the league, extra points are 33 yards now. So, I mean,
Also, we're not thinking enough about, he did have surgery in the offseason. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. But at the same time, if you're not able to do it, then don't cost your team points by trying to go out there and do it.
I mean, it changes how you run offense down there in that part of the field if you know that you
exactly.
can't kick.
And I think the excuses are running out for Alvano, where it's like if you can do it, great. If not, we got to figure out plan B at this point going forward, because there's going to be situations in conference play where we're like, all right, we need these 3 points.
Yeah.
I mean, their whole mantra this offseason was chasing three. What's a good way to get 3 points? Kicking field goals. Oh, my gosh.
It's sad. And I want him to succeed. But
I wanted to ask you guys is, after seeing what we did to Colorado, does that change your outlook on any of the future games where you're like, we may drop that one, or I feel confident about this one, or you standing firm on your predictions?
It's nothing that Nebraska has done or hasn't done. It's more so that I wasn't expecting Illinois to be kind of good. I still think that we win that game. I just think it's going to be closer than it would have to start the season.
And I'll go on the other end. Not that it has much to do with Nebraska and how they played, but Wisconsin looks a lot shakier than I would have pegged them at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. And I guess I would say, too, before I could envision a blowout against Ohio State, now I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And what I will say about Nebraska's play and how I view them now, it's very affirming that I'm starting to see it come together. Because I going into the season, of course, we knew that the defense was going to be really good. Nash and Ty were going to be a problem. Tommy Hill's a dog, but I mean, until you see it, until you see a couple of wins in the win column, until you see them put NFL quarterbacks in a blender, it's very affirming. So and it's tough to say because we're 2 games in, 2 games that we should have won. That's more so what I'm worried about as far as just winning the games that you're supposed to win. And so far, so good, but I would like to see a few more under the belt.
I think for me, the biggest thing that's going to be telling is the first couple times we get in some adverse situations, how we respond. Hopefully, Illinois strains us a little bit where the offense has to go into another gear, and the defense has to really buckle down and keep guys out of the end zone. But I'm glad we get Purdue on the road before we go to Indiana, because I feel like if those were flipped, I would feel like we might drop that Indiana one. But hopefully we take care of business. We're 7-0 going into Ohio State. In worst case scenario, 6-1. But going down the stretch, the only 2 games that really truly worry me about dropping are Ohio State and USC. I don't know how you guys.
USC does look good. USC looks good.
They're tough, and their defense got a lot better. So it's not just going to be a shootout by any means.
Yeah, going to be a fun season though.
It does kind of feel like, as a Nuggets fan, it feels a little bit like that. Where, I mean, for years, Nuggets fans are banging the table about Nikola Jokic and how good he is, and how this is a championship team, but just injuries and bad luck or whatever. And then they finally win it. You're like, I've been telling you this. This is, I now what I'm seeing is finally coming to fruition. Kind of feels like that. We're like, in my bones, I knew that Nebraska was going to be good, but it just, I got to see it. Now we're seeing it.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the talking heads start to say that now as well. Like, oh, they used to be the crazy Nebraska fans. Oh, this year's our year. Well, you're finally right. People are starting to say that. So,
it's crazy what people's opinions on you will do when you're not, minus 18 and the second worst team in the country at turning the ball over will do.
Yeah. We didn't mention, though, we're ranked.
We are ranked.
Huge.
I didn't even have that on the sheet. That's right. First time since 2019.
How's it feel?
It feels so.
Dream.
It feels so fitting that the last time we were ranked, we lost to Colorado, dropped out of the rankings, and now we finally get to beat up on Colorado to get back into the rankings.
2018 when we were playing in Boulder.
2018 was in Lincoln. That was.
What year?
Yeah. Because it was Sefao Lufau in 2018 who hit that crazy game-winning touchdown pass in 2018. And then Boulder must have been 2019, where, shocker, Nebraska didn't have a good enough kicker in overtime. Some things don't change, I guess.
What was the year you were saying the last time we were ranked?
2019. Because that was that was Scott Frost's second year. We were supposed to win the West that year. I think we were ranked the 24th.
That was 2 a.m. sophomore year?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Had some Heisman.
Feels like forever ago.
Oh, my gosh. What a world.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of crazy that we're ranked 23, but NIU is ranked 25. I don't know. I guess we haven't beat any ranked teams. I just feel like what we've shown, the fact that we're only 2 spots away from NIU is kind of crazy. But
I mean, overall, I think the AP poll is dog shit. I really hate a lot of things about it, but except Nebraska, they got that right, I guess. But then, I see what you mean, and I'm buying into it too. Shout out John Wilner, who had Nebraska, I think, as high as 13. But his polls all sorts of fucked.
That's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's hard to sit here and say NIU shouldn't be ranked when they're 2-0 and they have a road win against the number 5 team in the country. Like that's
the problem with the AP poll is that Notre Dame should have never been that high in the first place.
I'm not saying that NIU shouldn't be ranked. It's weird that they're so close together, is all I'm saying.
Like, you think we should be lower or they should be higher?
We should be like 21, 22 if they're 25. Okay, again, this is just my delusional Nebraska brain because we just came off a big win and I feel like we're way better. But again, haven't shown anything quite like beating the number 5 team in the nation. So
I feel it.
And I think that kind of observations will come.
Yeah.
Which is all part of the process. But I'm hyped. Boston College getting ranked is also very silly to me. I was on a big red pad. Missouri's up to 6 now.
It's kind of dumb that Boston College got ranked because, yes, they beat the number 10 team, but they were already 0-1 at that point and were probably going to be pretty close to being out of the rankings. It's just because there wasn't a poll from week 0 to week 1 to change it.
Right.
So, I mean, if there was ever a fraudulent ranked team, well, they play Missouri this week, so they're probably going to get blown out and drop out anyway. So,
well, that's my conspiracy theory is that the AP poll just wanted to give that SEC team a ranked win. So they're like, okay, let's.
And speaking of that,
throw Boston College.
Illinois is 26 this week. I feel like if Nebraska takes care of business in Illinois, like they're going to rank Illinois just because they want another ranked matchup next week.
I'll take that. That sounds good to me.
Wait, Illinois isn't ranked? I thought they were.
No, they were 26th in the AP poll.
Oh, I thought I saw a ranking that they were 22. Maybe that was somebody. Maybe maybe it was a one poll or somebody's like, oh, these are my predictions, or I don't know. Maybe I didn't look at it close enough, but
I think they deserve to be, but
yeah. But you could also say, like you guys are talking about Boston College, you could say the same thing about Georgia Tech, right? Like, yeah, they beat Florida State and they got ranked, and then they
yeah. Well, I think
kind
you're
of got
seeing
shit on by Syracuse.
they made it close there at the end, but yeah, I think you're seeing that beating Florida State was not that big of an accomplishment for anybody,
Yeah,
but they still had that ranking next to their name, so people are going to respect that win. So
yeah, yeah. Also,
Crazy
Kyle
stuff.
McCord, dog.
He,
hand up. I will admit I was wrong about him, and the whole country owes him an apology, and I'll be the one leading that apology tour because that guy can fucking sling it.
well, if only
You
we
know
had
who
somebody on the show
doesn't?
who's been yapping about
Yeah.
how good
You
Kyle
know who
McCord is
doesn't
this
owe
whole
him an
time.
apology? Myself and Brandon.
No, fuck you guys. I'm not worried about
We were on that fucking train the whole time.
But furthermore, on that point, I want to point out that Michigan had a chance to do the funniest thing ever and get him out of the transfer portal.
And they'd be so
And
much better off.
oh my God, with what Michigan currently has, I mean, I think Michigan could go back to the playoff if they had McCord. Now I'm like, Michigan's going to lose at least 3, probably more games this year with what they have.
That was another affirming thing for me this week because all season I'm like, why do people? What am I missing about Michigan that people think they're going to be
It's
in the top
they
tier of the
had
Big Ten?
they have a couple talented guys on defense, but and then Donovan Edwards. Everybody thinks so highly of Donovan Edwards, and I mean, I don't think he is what Blake Corum was, or even close to that.
I
So,
think you're absolutely right.
and Harbaugh makes a difference. Going from Harbaugh to Sharon Moore is a tough drop off.
I did see somebody, I don't know if it was like a news outlet or something. They said that they fumbled that so bad because they were essentially chasing last year's Michigan team. So that's why they hired him instead of going out and finding like a big name coach to fill that position. Makes you think, makes you wonder.
Makes me think of all the Michigan fans who yap at Ryan Day, born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. I imagine starting at third base and having to trot back on to second base or first base.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff.
And the thing is, like, after this year going into next year, the sanctions could be handed out for Michigan. So, like, we may see like a 10, 15-year run of Michigan just being terrible.
I can't
Be
believe it.
sad to see the big house would be not so big anymore, huh?
It's still a name brand. So, I mean, they could right the ship and get another big name coach. But, I mean, the outlook is looking bleak for them as of right now.
Well, if we're being
Imagine one
honest,
of the,
I don't think Michigan's an A job.
it's a big program, like it's a big brand name.
Well, I think of with all that's happened and like with the sanctions probably coming, it's probably not going to be an A job, but like just off of like tradition and the big house and resources, it's an A job.
I mean, I'm just thinking like when I think of an A job, I think of people leaving B jobs for, and if I have a B job, I don't know why I would. I don't think Michigan's the spot. I mean, you're in
Yeah.
Ohio State's shadow. You're not exactly a recruiting hotbed. I mean, yeah, you have the resources and everything, but even USC dealing with those sanctions, they got big names.
Yeah.
But I don't think like how. I mean, when Alabama's coaching job came up, and it's different. Everybody was on the list of possible targets.
But
Michigan's
that one,
that list is
I would
so much smaller.
I would argue that when the Alabama job came open, that's not an A job because who wants to follow Nick Saban? You know what I
Well,
mean?
and that's a good point. But I also think now Michigan fans are a different beast. They think that so I feel like you get almost Alabama expectations without Alabama
Yep. Yep.
resources.
It's I think situationally right now Michigan is not an A job, but like under normal circumstances it would be. But I agree with what you're saying.
Like if Jim Harbaugh didn't go to Michigan, I don't know if Jim Harbaugh takes the Michigan job.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. He took it because his dad coached there, and he had love for that place. But I mean, I don't know. I think it's an A job of because of the conference and the name and all that other shit. But it's a tough, like, you have to win. You have to beat Ohio State. It's a tough job to have.
Like if Michigan goes to James Franklin and offers him the job, do you think he takes it?
I would say no because just because of like he's already in a good spot at Penn State. Now I'm trying to think of someone who would take the step up, but it's hard to say.
It feels like Lane Kiffin's due for an A+ job. I don't think he leaves Ole Miss for.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a coach that wants to take that job with all that's going on in that program right now. So,
Right.
I mean,
And that's also true.
so
Oh man, well we know all too well about a coaching search. We just had one a couple years ago, and I think to all of our initial reactions, I think it started out pretty well. This time last year I was a bit frustrated. I saw a lot of buzz with Coach Prime in Colorado, and then I saw Nebraska get their teeth knocked in by the Buffaloes, and thought, my gosh, it doesn't take that long to get the program back on its feet. Turns out, that is true. It doesn't take very long, and Nebraska's back on their feet. So I'd like to just kind of take a stroll down, what could have been Lane, and kind of go over some of the coaches that were on the short list for the Nebraska job, and kind of talk about where I think the program would be if they had hired him. And then the first one I would talk about is interim head coach Mickey Joseph. He was on the list. Let's just pretend in a world that there's no trouble involved. What does Nebraska look like today if he gets the nod to be the first full-time head coach?
I think that's a good. I think that's a solid like B or B plus hire, without the trouble, because he's a great
Good
recruiter.
recruiter. Yeah. Other than that, I don't know much more about him as like a coach. I would say C plus, B minus.
Yeah, that's about where I would go. It's and I guess what I'm holding the measuring stick up to is, do you think that you'd feel as good about Nebraska today with him as the head coach compared to Matt Rule? And I think with Mickey Joseph, that's a pretty easy no. I think I like a lot about Mickey Joseph recruiting, good development. I mean, he beat Iowa. He's 1-0 against Iowa. Let's not forget that. But yeah, I think there's a pretty low ceiling with Mickey Joseph.
Yeah, I don't think anybody on that list is going to be. We're going to feel as good about as we do right now. Oh my goodness, CMC not playing tonight. Just got that.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at.
Oh my goodness.
It looks like they better feed George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk.
Tough break.
Tough break. Who else is on this list? Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops was one of my guys. He was my number one, call for a while. And I think he's a really good coach. I think it's very funny all that stuff happened with Texas A&M, which would have led me to believe that he was ready to take another step if Nebraska could really come knocking. How do you think Mark Stoops would be doing in Lincoln?
Not good. I think he's a worse version of Bo Pelini.
Interesting.
Like a guy that'll get you 7 or 8 wins every year, but not much more than that. Because that's what he's been at Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Kentucky.
Yeah, it's hard to project, but I mean, like, we would never have to worry about missing a bowl game with him, I think, but I don't think we would have championship aspirations a whole lot.
Speaking of coaches who have done quite a bit with little as far as resources, brand power goes. Matt Campbell just won the Cy Hawk Trophy for the second time in 3 years. I'm already seeing some head shakes.
Ooh.
I'm going to stomp my feet on this one. I am so glad we didn't hire him. What has
I
he
think he's
done?
an all right coach, but I think he does better with not a whole lot than he would if he had a whole lot. If that makes any sense.
It's a different beast. It's
Yeah.
a different beast.
He does very well with low expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's like, I mean, in his time at Iowa State, unless I'm just forgetting, he's not won any Big 12 titles.
No Big 12 titles.
Not gotten any big bowl games.
He won a New Year's Six bowl game in 2020, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay, well, good one.
One more than Iowa in that span. Just want to throw that out there.
Yes. I don't want to take that away from him by any means.
One more than us as well.
He has been losing. He has been losing the war with Iowa. He did win this year, so good on him. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we hired Rule. I'm just not a Matt Campbell believer.
All right, understood. Hiring coaches from Iowa State never work out. I see.
It's just so, like this time, or in the off season before we hired Matt Rule a couple years ago, or I guess last year, you throw these names out, and I'm like, hell yeah. But now we have Matt Rule, and we see who he is, and the kind of coach he is. It's like,
yeah.
Unless Nick Saban walks through that door.
I'll tell you what, there's less than 10 coaches in the country I'd rather have than Matt Rule.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, I'll put a pin in that same kind of conversation with any of these other guys on the list. Lance Leipold on it. Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien would have been interesting. I mean, if it works out at Boston College, that would have been a good move.
If you can win there, that's a pretty solid coaching job.
But I think what all of these guys have in common is that they are objectively good coaches, and they're good at running their respective programs. And I think they probably do a good job here too. But that's not exactly what Nebraska needed at the time. They needed a guy who gets down to the studs, rebuilds the culture, who's done nothing but that. And Matt Rule, I think, is the perfect guy. I think that's about right. I do think it's funny, this list I sent you from 9/12/22, Deion Sanders is listed higher on the odds than Matt Rule, and I think we can all agree, thank God that never happened.
Oh, I think a better question might be, like who of Brooke, give me the top 10 people that you would rather have over Matt Rule.
Right.
Let's say Kirby Smart, for instance.
Yes, that's one.
Do you think? No, yeah, he would take him over him, but do you think he would be as wildly successful in Nebraska as he is at Georgia?
Yeah, just because, again, elite recruiter.
That solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, I wonder how, or if at all, how difficult it would be to bring guys from Georgia and Alabama, where he recruits really well, how hard it would take to get them to come to Nebraska.
But he's also, you got to remember, he is a great defensive coach. So, how wildly revered Tony White is to us right now. Kirby Smart's on that level as a defensive coach. So, when he was the DC at Bama, again, just great defenses. And yes, that is at Bama, but they were just running through people. And he gets it. He knows how to win in college football. And I think he could do that at just about anywhere.
Okay.
But that's a good point, because while Kirby Smart and I'm just trying to think of other names, I would put Lincoln Riley on that list. Who else would be on that list, by the way?
I don't know that I would put Lincoln Riley on that list. Maybe it's not even 10 guys I would want, but
I mean, those are the first two names that come up.
I think DeBoer at Bama.
That's a good one. Dan Lanning, Shark. Okay, now they're coming to mind.
Sark, Yes is fringy on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if I would take him over Rule.
That's a fringe one. You could sway me either
Yeah.
way. I think I
But-
would take Kiffin.
Well, and that's the point that I'm trying to work to is even those elite coaches, I don't know if they're. What I would say about Sark is that he did rebuild Texas at a time where they were in a similar spot to Nebraska, so I think there's that. But I don't know outside of him if there's a really elite fit. Like Matt Rule fits Nebraska. I don't know if those other guys fit the same way.
But for Sark, you're in one of the best hotbeds for athletes in the country. So like it's easy to get these guys that are from Texas to go to Texas. Not saying that it's super like, oh, it's a done deal for these kids, but it's a lot easier to say, hey, just drive an hour, come to Texas, your family can be at every game, as opposed to, yeah, they got to fly out to Nebraska and you got to play in the cold and all this stuff.
I don't know, because there was once upon a time where Nebraska was a pipeline for Texas recruits. I mean, considered with all the travel that goes on in the country, it could be worse, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're throwing down. I would just add to wrap this up. I don't think Texas is in a spot that it's in now because of recruiting. I think it's development fits.
Yeah.
So, I see the vision. It is a lot easier to get those blue chip prospects in, the Lone Star State. But anyways, I mean,
before we move on,
go ahead.
One last thing. I was looking back at the list that you sent us. The Ndamukong Suh was on this list. he was a candidate.
I think that was more publicity than anything because
just slightly less odds than Matt Rule.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Unbelievable
but
stuff.
The people of Nebraska would have loved that if that's who.
Oh man, that's the winning formula. Just get a all-time great player for your program and hire them as head coach. That's the winning formula.
It worked out really well for us last time.
But to kind of just wrap it up, and the point I really wanted to make here is that I love Matt Rule. I think he's a great fit on 9-12 when that list was combined. I think if you had told me that Matt Rule would be the guy, I would have felt a little underwhelmed. But, I mean, knowing what he's brought to this program and just the energy that he brings, the coaches that he's brought with him. I mean, John Butler as a DB's coach, I mean, that's unbelievable. Tony White's been a superstar. Satterfield is also on the staff. It's just been a home run for Matt Rule, and I'm having such a hard time imagining a better scenario.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Me?
Did I say anything that wasn't correct?
You got to push all the goddamn buttons, don't you?
No, I'm just being silly. I'm a Satterfield defender. I will defend him as long as we're winning.